Imagine finding the love of your life with a simple swipe, only to discover that this seemingly innocent encounter is the tip of an iceberg of secrets, lies, and danger. Sophia Jenkins, a young nurse from Chicago, never imagined that a match on a dating app would lead her on a thrilling journey of forbidden love, government conspiracies, and shocking family revelations. Get ready for an emotional roller coaster that will make you question whom to trust, bring you to tears, and leave you breathless until the last second. This is a story that will make you believe fate has a peculiar and potentially deadly sense of humor. The chilly Chicago air cut across Sophia's face as she hurried through the busy downtown streets. The dark winter sky had already swallowed the last rays of sunlight, though it was only 6:30 p.m. Sophia, with her dark brown hair pulled into a messy bun and still wearing her nurse's uniform beneath a heavy coat, felt the weight of yet another exhausting shift at Northwestern Memorial Hospital. At 23, Sophia Jenkins was a dedicated and compassionate young woman who had chosen nursing not just as a profession but as a calling. Her green eyes, usually bright and full of life, now looked tired after 12 hours dealing with emergencies, difficult patients, and the endless bureaucracy of the healthcare system. As she headed to the metro station, her thoughts wandered between the day's cases, especially that of a child with leukemia who had touched her heart, and the loneliness awaiting her in her small apartment in Lakeview. Sophia boarded the crowded metro, managing to find a seat after 2 stops. As the train rattled along the tracks, she took out her smartphone, hesitating for a moment before opening the dating app her coworker Melissa had insisted she install. "You need to have some fun, Soph," Melissa had said during lunch. "You can't live just for work." With a sigh, Sophia began swiping through profiles, scrolling past various men without much interest, arrogant lawyers, pretentious artists, and dozens of shirtless gym selfies. She was about to close the app when one photo caught her attention. The man in the picture had a gentle smile and piercing blue eyes that seemed to look right at her. His name was Jake, 28, a lawyer. Normally, Sophia would have swiped left. Lawyers weren't exactly her type, but something in those eyes made her pause. The profile description read, "Looking for someone to debate the merits of mint chocolate chip ice cream while stargazing at the Adler Planetarium. Bonus points if you know the names of all Jupiter's moons." Sophia couldn't help but smile. It was the first time in weeks something had made her smile after a shift. Without thinking much, she swiped right on Jake's profile. Seconds later, her phone buzzed. It was a match. Sophia's heart quickened a bit. She hadn't expected a match so quickly. Before she could decide whether to message him or not, a notification popped up. "Jake, let me guess, you're also a staunch defender of mint chocolate chip ice cream?" Sophia hesitated for a moment, her fingers hovering over the keyboard. Part of her wanted to ignore the message, to return to her safe routine of work-home Netflix. But another part, a part she had neglected for too long, longed for connection, for something beyond the hospital walls. "Sophia, actually, I'm more of a vanilla with hot fudge kind of girl, but I'm willing to be convinced if the argument is good enough." Jake, an open mind. That's rare these days. How about we debate the merits of various ice cream flavors while I try to convert you to mint chocolate chip? Sophia smiled again, feeling a wave of excitement she hadn't felt in a long time. "Sophia, sounds like an interesting proposition, but I must warn you, I'm a nurse, so I have scientific arguments about why vanilla is clearly the superior choice." Jake, a nurse? Impressive. I think I just lost this debate before it even started. But what about Jupiter's moons? Can you name them all? The metro stopped at Sophia's station, and she realized she had almost missed her stop. So absorbed was she in the conversation. "Sophia, Io, Europa, Ganymede, and Callisto are the main ones, but there are dozens of smaller ones. Looks like we both have our strengths." As she walked to her apartment, Sophia continued messaging with Jake. The conversation flowed naturally, moving from ice cream and astronomy to their careers, musical tastes, and favorite movies. For the first time in months, Sophia felt a spark of excitement, a connection beyond the sterile hospital walls. Arriving home, Sophia threw her coat over the couch and collapsed onto her bed, still holding her phone. The apartment was quiet except for the distant sound of traffic outside and the occasional meow from her cat, Pixel, demanding attention. Jake, so, what do you think about continuing this conversation in person? How about coffee this weekend? Sophia felt a flutter in her stomach. Dates were not her forte, and the few she had in recent years had been disastrous. But something about Jake seemed different. Maybe it was time to give chance a try. Sophia, you know what? Why not? I'm off on Saturday. Jake, perfect. I know a great coffee shop near Millennium Park. They have mint chocolate chip ice cream, just saying. Sophia laughed, feeling a mix of nerves and excitement. As they finalized the details of their meeting, she couldn't help but think that maybe, just maybe, something interesting was about to happen in her life. What Sophia didn't know was that this simple match on a dating app was about to trigger a series of events that would change her life forever. As she fell asleep that night, dreaming of blue eyes and mint ice cream, fate was already in motion, weaving a complex web of coincidences, secrets, and revelations that no one could predict. Across town, in an elegant apartment overlooking Lake Michigan, Jake closed his laptop, an enigmatic smile on his face. His conversation with Sophia had been a ray of light in an otherwise dark day, filled with legal documents and questionable ethics. But there was more to this story than a simple casual encounter. Much more. And so, with a simple swipe, the stage was set for a story that would test the limits of love, loyalty, and morality, leaving everyone involved forever changed. The morning sun filtered through the curtains of Diana Jenkins' apartment, illuminating a space that was once filled with life and laughter, but now felt strangely empty and silent. Diana, a 45-year-old woman with dyed blonde hair and tired eyes, sat at the kitchen table, staring at a cup of cold coffee and a pile of unpaid bills. It had been 6 months since the divorce was finalized, leaving Diana with a void that seemed impossible to fill. The walls, once adorned with pictures of a happy family, now displayed empty spaces, constantly reminding her of what she had lost. With a heavy sigh, Diana picked up her phone, hesitating for a moment before opening the dating app she had installed the previous week. She knew it was too soon, that she wasn't ready to move on, but loneliness was a voracious monster that consumed her day by day. As she swiped through the profiles, Diana felt a pang of guilt. What would Sophia think if she knew her mother was using a dating app? The relationship between mother and daughter, once so close, had become tense and distant in recent months. Diana knew she should tell Sophia about her depression, about the nights when she could barely get out of bed, but the fear of disappointing her daughter was paralyzing. The phone rang, interrupting her thoughts. It was Dr. Patel, her psychiatrist. Mrs. Jenkins. The calm voice of the doctor sounded on the other end of the line. I'm calling to confirm our session this afternoon. I also want to discuss an adjustment to your medication. Diana closed her eyes, feeling the weight of reality on her shoulders. Yes, doctor. I'll be there. After hanging up, Diana got up and went to the bathroom. She looked at herself in the mirror, barely recognizing the woman staring back at her. Where was the confident, lively Diana she used to be? The woman who had built a successful career as a marketing manager, known for her contagious laugh and boundless energy? Opening the bathroom cabinet, Diana stared at the row of antidepressants and anxiolytics, her new reality in small colorful pills. With trembling fingers, she took her morning dose, swallowing it with a gulp of water. Across town, in his downtown Chicago office, Jake Matthews was immersed in a pile of legal documents. The corporate fraud case that had landed on his desk was much bigger than he initially thought. Starlight Industries, one of the largest technology companies in the country, was involved in a money laundering scheme that could shake the foundations of Wall Street. Jake rubbed his tired eyes, feeling the weight of responsibility on his shoulders. As a 28-year-old lawyer, this case could make or break his career. But the deeper he delved into the details, the more disturbed he became by what he was uncovering. His phone buzzed, a notification from the dating app. It was a message from Sophia, the nurse he had arranged to meet. For a moment, Jake felt a smile form on his lips, a brief escape from the surrounding tension. Sophia, I hope your day is less chaotic than mine. I just had to deal with a patient who swore he was abducted by aliens last night." Jake laughed, feeling a warm sensation in his chest. There was something about Sophia, a simplicity and honesty that attracted him. It was a refreshing contrast to the world of lies and manipulations he was immersed in. "Jake, well, at least the aliens aren't trying to defraud the financial system. Consider yourself lucky." He hesitated before sending, worried he had revealed too much. But the message was already sent. "Sophia, defraud the financial system? Sounds like your day is even more interesting than mine. Careful, Mr. Lawyer, or I'll start thinking you lead a double life as an international spy." Jake felt a knot form in his stomach. If only Sophia knew how close to the truth she was. The Starlight case wasn't just about financial fraud. There were rumors of connections to organized crime and even involvement of high-ranking political figures. The more Jake investigated, the more dangerous the terrain became. A knock on the door brought him back to reality. It was Sarah, his assistant. "Jake, Mr. Donovan wants to see you in his office." Now, Jake's heart raced. Richard Donovan was the senior partner of the firm, known for his ruthless nature and powerful connections. A summons to his office was rarely a good sign. As he made his way to Donovan's office, Jake couldn't help but think of Sophia, of how that casual encounter through the app could be a ray of light amidst the darkness closing in around him. Back at Diana's apartment, the shrill sound of the doorbell cut through the silence. With a racing heart, she headed to the door, checking the peephole. It was Sophia. Diana felt panic. She wasn't prepared to see her daughter, not now, not in this state. Quickly, she ran to the bathroom, running a comb through her disheveled hair and splashing water on her face in a futile attempt to appear more composed. "Mom, are you there?" Sophia's voice sounded from the other side of the door. With one last look in the mirror, Diana forced a smile and opened the door. "Sophia, what a pleasant surprise!" she exclaimed, hoping her voice wouldn't betray the whirlwind of emotions she felt. Sophia entered, her sharp nurse's eyes immediately noticing the signs of neglect in the apartment and her mother's worn-out appearance. "Mom, is everything okay? You look tired." Diana felt the mask of normality she had put on begin to crack. How could she continue hiding her pain from her own daughter? "I'm fine, dear. Just a bit tired from work. You know how it is." But as the words left her mouth, Diana knew she couldn't sustain the lie any longer. The weight of secrets, depression, loneliness, all seemed about to overflow. Sophia stepped forward, concern evident on her face. "Mom, what's going on? You can tell me." At that moment, looking into her daughter's eyes, Diana felt the walls she had built around herself begin to crumble. The tears she had suppressed for so long finally found their way, and before she could stop herself, she was sobbing in Sophia's arms. "Oh, dear," Diana managed to say between sobs. "There's so much I need to tell you." As mother and daughter embraced, the secrets that had kept them apart for so long began to surface. What neither of them knew was that this moment of vulnerability and honesty was just the beginning of a journey that would test the limits of their love and loyalty. And somewhere among Chicago's skyscrapers, Jake was leaving Donovan's office, his face pale and his hands trembling slightly. The Starlight case had just become much more complicated and dangerous than he could have ever imagined. As he walked back to his office, his phone buzzed again. It was another message from Sophia. For a brief moment, Jake considered canceling the date, distancing himself from any connection that could further complicate his already chaotic life. But something stopped him. Perhaps, in the midst of all this darkness, he needed a bit of light. With a deep sigh, Jake picked up his phone to respond, unaware that each word he typed was bringing him one step closer to a destiny that would change his life forever. Millennium Park was bustling with life that Saturday afternoon. Families strolled, tourists snapped photos of the famous bean, and couples walked hand in hand under the mild autumn sun. Sophia arrived at the agreed-upon cafe 15 minutes early, her stomach a knot of nerves and anticipation. She chose a table near the window, where she could watch the park's activity and keep an eye on the door. Dressed in jeans, a navy blue blouse, and a light jacket. Sophia tried to look casual, though she had spent more time getting ready than she cared to admit. The events of the past few days weighed heavily on her mind. The conversation with her mother had been emotionally exhausting, revealing layers of pain and isolation that Diana had hidden for months. Sophia felt guilty for not noticing earlier, for being so absorbed in her own world that she missed her mother's suffering. "Sorry I'm late," a male voice interrupted her thoughts. Sophia looked up, and her heart skipped a beat. Jake stood there, taller than she had imagined, with a warm smile and those blue eyes that had caught her attention on the app. "Jake, hi." Sophia stood up, not knowing exactly how to greet him. They ended up in a somewhat awkward half-hug, half-handshake. "Hope I didn't keep you waiting long," Jake said, sitting down. "Traffic was a nightmare." No, I got here early," Sophia replied, feeling her cheeks flush slightly. There was a moment of silence as they both adjusted to the reality of finally meeting face to face. Jake seemed a bit nervous, constantly adjusting the tie he wore with his well-tailored suit. "So," Sophia began, trying to break the ice. "How was your day saving the corporate world?" Jake laughed, but there was tension in his eyes that Sophia didn't miss. "Oh, the usual. Mountains of paperwork, endless meetings, trying not to fall asleep over 200-page contracts." A waitress approached to take their orders. Jake ordered an espresso, while Sophia opted for a cappuccino. "And the mint chocolate chip ice cream?" Sophia teased, recalling their initial conversation. Jake smiled, seeming to relax a bit. I thought I'd save that for dessert. After all, I need time to build my case for its superiority." The conversation flowed naturally from there. They talked about their jobs, with Sophia sharing funny and sometimes touching stories from the hospital, and Jake recounting the lighter aspects of being a lawyer, carefully avoiding mention of the Starlight case that consumed him. "So, what made you choose nursing?" Jake asked, genuinely interested. Sophia hesitated for a moment, her eyes growing distant. "My dad," she said finally. He had cancer when I was a teenager. I spent a lot of time in hospitals, seeing the incredible work nurses did. Not just medically, but offering comfort, hope. I knew then that it was what I wanted to do." Jake reached across the table, giving Sophia's hand a gentle squeeze. "That's really inspiring, Sophia. Your dad must be very proud." Sophia felt a lump in her throat. "He passed away 5 years ago," she said softly. "But yes, I hope he is." A comfortable silence settled between them, their hands still connected over the table. It was Jake who finally broke the moment. "And what about you?" Sophia asked, discreetly wiping away a tear. "Did you always dream of being a lawyer?" Jake laughed, a sound tinged with bitterness. "Actually, I wanted to be an astronaut when I was a kid, hence my obsession with Jupiter's moons." "What changed?" Jake hesitated, as if deciding how much to reveal. "My dad," he said finally. "He was a lawyer. When he died, I kind of took up the mantle, so to speak." Sophia noticed a shadow pass over Jake's face, as if there was more to the story than he was telling. Before she could ask more, Jake's phone vibrated violently on the table. He glanced at the screen and visibly paled. "Excuse me, I need to take this." Jake stepped away from the table, speaking in a low and urgent tone on the phone. Sophia couldn't help but notice how tense his shoulders were, how his hands gestured nervously as he spoke. When he returned, there was a mask of calm on his face, but Sophia could see the tension in his eyes. "Is everything all right?" she asked, concerned. Yes, Jake replied quickly, forcing a smile. "Just a difficult client." They tried to resume their light-hearted conversation, but something had changed. Jake seemed distant, frequently checking his phone. Finally, after finishing their coffees, Jake leaned forward, a look of genuine regret on his face. "Sophia, I'm really sorry, but I need to go. Something urgent came up at work." Sophia felt a pang of disappointment but nodded understandingly. "Of course, I understand. Duty calls, right?" They stood up, slightly awkward again. "I really enjoyed meeting you, Sophia," Jake said sincerely. Can we do this again? Sophia smiled, ignoring the voice in her head that said something was off. I'd like that. They exchanged a quick hug, and then Jake hurried out, casting one last look at Sophia before disappearing into the park's crowd. Sophia stood there for a moment, watching the direction Jake had gone. She liked him, really liked him, but she couldn't shake the feeling that he was hiding something. As she walked home, Sophia couldn't imagine that this seemingly innocent date had set in motion a series of events that would change her life forever. Across town, Jake got into a black car with tinted windows, his face a mask of concern. What happened? He asked the man in the driver's seat. They know, Jake, the man replied gravely. They know you're investigating, and they're not happy. Jake closed his eyes, feeling the weight of the world on his shoulders. He thought of Sophia, her gentle smile and understanding eyes. For a brief moment, he had glimpsed a different life, a normal life. But now, as the car sped through the streets of Chicago, Jake knew that normal was no longer an option. The truth had to come out no matter the cost. What Jake didn't know was that the cost would be much higher than he could ever imagine. And that Sophia, the sweet nurse he had just met, would be at the center of it all. Sophia turned the key in the lock of her apartment, her mind still filled with thoughts about the meeting with Jake. As she entered, she was greeted by the insistent meowing of Pixel, her black cat, demanding immediate attention. "Hey boy," she murmured, bending down to pet the feline. "You won't believe the day I've had." While preparing Pixel's food, Sophia couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. Jake had been charming, intelligent, and funny, exactly as he appeared online. But that mysterious phone call, the sudden tension in his eyes, there was more to the story than he was letting on. The ring of her phone pulled her from her reverie. It was her mother. "Hi, Mom," Sophia answered, feeling a pang of concern. Since the emotional conversation they had days ago, things between them had been different, more honest perhaps, but also more fragile. "Sophia, dear?" Diana's voice sounded tired, but there was a touch of something else. Nervousness. "I was thinking, would you like to come over for dinner tomorrow night?" Sophia hesitated. Normally, she would make up an excuse, an extra shift at the hospital, plans with friends. But after the recent revelations about her mother's depression, she knew she couldn't keep avoiding her. "Sure, Mom. What time?" "7 is good?" I have something I need to tell you." Sophia's heart raced. "More secrets? Is everything okay, Mom? You sound..." "Everything's fine, dear. Just some changes. We'll talk tomorrow. Okay?" After hanging up, Sophia flopped onto the couch, Pixel immediately jumping into her lap. What could her mother want to tell her? And why did she sound so nervous? The next day, Sophia arrived at her mother's apartment promptly at 7. The smell of lasagna, Sophia's favorite dish, filled the air. "Mom!" Sophia called out, entering the kitchen. Diana was standing with her back to the door, stirring something on the stove. When she turned around, Sophia immediately noticed the change. Her mother had cut her hair into a stylish new bob that made her look years younger. She was also wearing a new, colorful blouse, a stark contrast to the drab clothes she'd been wearing for months. "Sophia, I'm so glad you came," Diana smiled, but there was a nervousness in her eyes. During dinner, the conversation flowed surprisingly well. Diana asked about Sophia's work, shared funny stories about her own patients at the physical therapy clinic where she worked. But Sophia could sense that there was something more, an underlying tension. Finally, after dessert, Diana cleared her throat. "Sophia, there's something I need to tell you." Sophia braced herself, 1,000 scenarios running through her mind. I met someone. Of all the possibilities Sophia had imagined, this wasn't one of them. "You? What?" Diana took a deep breath. "His name is Robert. We met online on a dating app." Sophia was stunned. Her mother on a dating app? The same mother who barely left the house a few weeks ago? "I know it's a surprise," Diana continued quickly, "but he's really amazing, Sophia. He makes me laugh, makes me feel alive again." Sophia tried to process the information. On one hand, she was happy to see her mother excited, with a sparkle in her eyes that had been missing for so long. But on the other, "Mom, are you sure? I mean, you barely know this guy. And after everything you went through with Dad." Diana reached across the table, taking Sophia's hand. "I know, dear. Believe me, I have my own doubts. But I can't let fear stop me from living, you know?" Sophia nodded slowly. "I understand. Just promise you'll be careful, okay?" Diana smiled, tears in her eyes. "I promise. Actually, I'd like you to meet him. How about dinner next week?" As Sophia drove home that night, her head was spinning. Her mother, dating online, Jake and his mysterious secrets. It seemed like the whole world had turned upside down in a matter of days. When she got home, Sophia picked up her phone, hesitating for a moment before opening the dating app. Jake's smiling photo greeted her on the screen. Her finger hovered over the message button. There was something about him that intrigued her, that made her want to know more. But the doubts persisted. What was he hiding? And did she really want to know? With a sigh, Sophia closed the app without sending a message. Tomorrow would be another day at the hospital, another chance to save lives and make a difference. The rest would have to wait. What Sophia didn't know was that, in an office downtown, Jake was looking at the same picture of her on the app, fighting his own internal battle. Tell the truth and risk everything, or keep Sophia safe, away from the danger that was rapidly approaching. The decision both would make in the next few hours would change the course of their lives forever. Sophia's shift at Northwestern Memorial Hospital was more chaotic than usual. A series of car accidents had filled the emergency room, and she barely had time to breathe between patients. It was during a rare moment of calm, while she updated charts at the nurse's station, that her phone buzzed with a notification. It was a message from Jake. "Hey, Sophia. Sorry about how our date ended. I'd like to see you again. How about dinner tomorrow night?" Sophia felt her heart race. Despite the doubts, she couldn't deny the attraction she felt for Jake. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard, ready to respond, when a familiar voice interrupted her. "Sophia, I need your help here." It was Dr. Chun, one of the hospital's most promising residents. He stood at the door of the trauma room, a worried expression on his face. "Of course, Dr. Chun. What's going on?" "We have a patient, middle-aged man, presenting strange symptoms. I thought you could take a look." Sophia put away her phone, leaving Jake's message unanswered for now. She followed Dr. Chun to the patient's bed. The man was conscious but visibly agitated. His eyes darted around, and he mumbled something unintelligible. "Mr. Thompson?" Sophia approached, speaking in a calm tone. "I'm Sophia, one of the nurses. Can you tell me what you're feeling?" The man fixed his gaze on her, and for a moment seemed to calm down. They're after me," he whispered. "Who's after you, Mr. Thompson?" "Starlight," he responded urgently. "They found out. I know too much." Sophia exchanged a confused look with Dr. Chun. "Starlight? Do you mean the tech company?" Mr. Thompson nodded frantically. "Fraud, money laundering. It's all a facade. I have proof." At that moment, the heart monitor began beeping rapidly. Mr. Thompson was going into tachycardia. "He's having a panic attack," Dr. Chun quickly diagnosed. "Sophia, 5 milligrams of diazepam, please." As Sophia administered the medication, she couldn't stop thinking about what Mr. Thompson had said. Starlight. Why did that name sound familiar? Hours later, with Mr. Thompson finally stabilized and sedated, Sophia finally had a moment to check her phone again. Jake's message was still there, waiting for a response. Then she remembered. Jake had mentioned something about corporate fraud during their date. Could it be? With her heart pounding, Sophia opened her browser and typed Starlight Industries fraud. The results left her stunned. Recent headlines spoke of rumors of a federal investigation into the company. Financial analysts speculated about irregularities in the company's reports. And there, in an article dated just a few days ago, was Jake Matthews' name listed as one of the lawyers possibly involved in the investigation. Sophia felt as if the ground had disappeared beneath her feet. Jake was investigating Starlight? Was that why he seemed so nervous and distracted during their date? Her hands trembled as she typed a response to Jake. "Dinner tomorrow sounds great, but first we need to talk. It's important." She had barely sent the message when another notification appeared. It was her mother. "Dear Robert, and I would like to invite you to dinner tomorrow night. Please say you'll come." Sophia stared at the two messages, feeling torn. On one hand, she needed to find out the truth about Jake and his involvement with Starlight. On the other, she had promised her mother she would meet Robert. As she pondered her decision, she couldn't imagine that her choices in the next 24 hours would place her at the center of a web of lies, danger, and shocking revelations that would change her life forever. Across town, in his office, Jake looked at Sophia's message with a mix of anxiety and relief. He knew he couldn't hide the truth from her any longer. But how could he explain the danger he was in without dragging her into the same abyss? The sound of footsteps in the hallway made him look up sharply. Whispered voices approached his door. Jake quickly closed the files on his desk and prepared for what was coming. The door opened, revealing two men in suits. "Mr. Matthews," one of them said, his voice cold as ice. "We'd like to have a word with you about Starlight Industries." Jake swallowed hard, knowing the game had drastically changed. And somewhere in the city, Sophia was about to be dragged into the center of this storm without even knowing it. The restaurant Jake had chosen was a small Italian bistro, tucked away on a side street in Lincoln Park. Sophia arrived first, her stomach in knots from nerves and anticipation. She had canceled dinner with her mother and Robert, promising to make it up to them the next day. Some truths couldn't wait. Jake arrived a few minutes later, looking tired and tense. His blue eyes, usually bright, were shadowed by deep circles. "Hi, Sophia," he said, sitting down. "Thanks for coming." Sophia noticed a slight tremor in his hands as he picked up the menu. "Jake, what's going on?" she asked directly. "And don't tell me it's nothing. I know about Starlight." Jake froze, his eyes widening in surprise and then fear. How did you find out?" Sophia explained about the patient at the hospital, omitting confidential details but sharing enough for Jake to understand. Jake ran a hand through his hair, seeming to age years in seconds. "Sophia, I'm so sorry. I never wanted to involve you in this." "Involve me in what exactly, Jake? What's happening?" Jake looked around nervously before leaning closer. "Starlight isn't what it seems. They're involved in a massive money laundering scheme, billions of dollars. And it's not just that. There are connections to organized crime, corrupt politicians. It's big, Sophia. Bigger than you can imagine." Sophia felt a chill run down her spine. "And you're investigating this?" Jake nodded. "I'm part of a secret task force. FBI, SEC, my law firm. We're working together to take them down. But it's dangerous. They know we're getting close." "Is that why you were so nervous on our first date?" "Yes. I got a threat that day. They know who I am, Sophia. And now they probably know about you too." Sophia's blood ran cold. "What do you mean?" "They followed me, saw us together. I'm so sorry, Sophia. I never should have dragged you into this." Sophia tried to process everything she was hearing. Her world, already seeming upside down over the past few days, now felt like it was spinning out of control. "What do we do now?" she asked, surprised at the firmness in her own voice. Jake looked at her, a mix of admiration and worry in his eyes. "You should walk away. Forget you ever met me. It's the only way to keep you safe." Sophia shook her head. "No, I can't do that. Not now that I know the truth." Before Jake could respond, Sophia's phone rang. It was her mother. "Mom, is everything okay?" Diana's voice was trembling, almost unrecognizable. "Sophia, you need to come home. Now." "Mom, what's happened?" It's Robert. He's not who I thought he was." "Sophia, I'm scared." Sophia's heart raced. "I'm on my way, Mom. Lock the doors. Don't let anyone in." She hung up and looked at Jake, panic clear in her eyes. "I have to go. My mom. She's in danger." Jake stood up immediately. "I'm coming with you." As they rushed to Jake's car, Sophia couldn't help but think about how everything was connected. Jake, Starlight, her mother, Robert. It was as if fate was weaving a complex web and she was caught in the center. What would they find at Diana's house? And how would tonight's revelations change their lives forever? As Jake sped through the streets of Chicago, breaking every speed limit, Sophia prayed silently. For her mother, for Jake, for herself. Because deep down, she knew that after tonight, nothing would ever be the same. Jake's car screeched to a halt in front of Diana's building. The apartment lights were on, but an eerie silence hung in the air. "Stay behind me," Jake instructed, his voice tense. As they climbed the stairs, Sophia's heart pounded so loudly she was sure Jake could hear it. What would they find behind that door? And how would tonight's revelations change the course of their lives forever? They reached Diana's door, and Jake knocked, ready to confront whatever awaited them. The door opened slightly, and Diana's pale, frightened face appeared. "Mom, are you okay?" Sophia asked, pushing the door open wider. Diana nodded shakily. "I'm fine now, but Robert," he showed his true colors. "He's been lying about everything." Sophia glanced at Jake, who looked grim. "Where is he now?" he asked. "He's gone," Diana replied. "I made him leave, but I'm scared, Sophia. I don't know who he really is." Jake took a deep breath. "We need to get you somewhere safe, Mrs. Jenkins, and we need to figure out who this Robert really is." As they made plans to leave, the door burst open, and Robert stood there, his face twisted with anger. "You think you can just get rid of me?" he snarled. "You have no idea who you're dealing with." Jake stepped in front of Sophia and Diana, ready to defend them. "Get out, Robert. Now." But Robert lunged at them, and a struggle ensued. Sophia watched in horror as Jake fought to protect them, realizing that this was just the beginning of a much larger battle. Sophia and Jake climbed the stairs of Diana's building 2 at a time, Sophia's heart hammering in her chest. When they reached the right floor, they stopped in front of the apartment door. An unsettling silence hung in the air. "Mom!" Sophia called, knocking on the door. No response. Jake put a hand on Sophia's shoulder. "Let me go first," he whispered, his posture tense, ready for anything. Sophia nodded, her hands trembling as she searched for the spare key her mother always left hidden in the doorframe. She found it and, with a soft click, the door opened. The apartment was dark, lit only by the faint city lights filtering through the windows. Jake entered first, his eyes scanning the room. Sophia followed closely, her heart in her throat. "Diana," Jake called softly. "Mrs. Jenkins?" A noise from the bedroom made them both freeze. Sophia moved to rush toward the sound, but Jake held her back, placing a finger to his lips, signaling for silence. They approached the bedroom door slowly. Jake opened it cautiously, revealing a scene that made Sophia stifle a scream. Diana was sitting on the bed, her eyes wide with fear. Next to her, holding her firmly by the arm, was a man Sophia assumed to be Robert. But this was not the Robert her mother had described. This man had a hard, calculating look, and in his free hand, a cold metal gun gleamed. "Ah, we have company," the man said, his voice surprisingly calm. "Come in, Miss Jenkins. And you too, Mr. Matthews. We've been expecting you." Sophia took a step forward, but Jake held her back. "Who are you?" he demanded. "What do you want?" The man smiled, a cold smile that didn't reach his eyes. "You can call me Mr. Smith. As for what I want, well, that's complicated. But let's start with those files you have on Starlight, Mr. Matthews." Jake paled. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Oh, I think you do," Mr. Smith replied, pressing the gun against Diana's temple, making her let out a muffled whimper. "And I suggest you start talking, or things might get unpleasant." Sophia felt the world spin around her. How had her mother gotten involved in this? How had she herself been dragged into this nightmare? "Let my mother go," Sophia said, her voice trembling but determined. She has nothing to do with this. Mr. Smith laughed. Oh, but she has everything to do with this, dear. You see, your mother here was very helpful in giving us access to you. And you, well, you are our key to Mr. Matthews. Diana sobbed. Sophia, I'm so sorry. I didn't know. He tricked me. Silence, Mr. Smith ordered. He then turned to Jake. Now, Mr. Matthews, let's talk about those files. Jake stepped forward, his hands raised in a gesture of surrender. Okay, I have the files, but they're not here. They're in a safe place. Excellent, Mr. Smith smiled. Then I suggest we take a little trip to get them. All of us. At that moment, several things happened at once. Jake moved suddenly, pushing Sophia aside. Diana, taking advantage of the distraction, elbowed Mr. Smith hard in the stomach. The gun went off, the sound deafening in the small room. Sophia screamed, her world turning to chaos and confusion. She saw Jake lunging at Mr. Smith, the two men struggling for the gun. Diana fell off the bed, crawling away from the fight. In the midst of the chaos, Sophia ran to her mother, pulling her to safety. The sound of sirens in the distance grew louder, drawing closer. Another shot echoed through the apartment. Then silence. Sophia lifted her head, her heart stopping for a moment as she saw the scene before her. Jake was standing, panting, the gun in his hand. Mr. Smith lay motionless on the floor. It's over, Jake said, his voice hoarse. But as the sirens grew louder and red and blue lights began to illuminate the room through the windows, Sophia knew this was far from over. In fact, she had a terrible feeling that this was just the beginning. Questions swirled in her mind. Who was Jake really? How deep did Starlight's conspiracy go? And how would they get out of this situation with their lives and freedom intact? As the building's doors burst open and heavy footsteps pounded up the stairs, Sophia held her mother tightly, her eyes meeting Jake's. In that gaze, a silent promise was made. They would face whatever came next. Together. Diana's apartment quickly filled with police officers and investigators. Sophia, Jake, and Diana were separated for individual questioning. The shock of the event still palpable in the air. Sophia sat rigidly in a kitchen chair, staring at a middle-aged detective with tired eyes. Miss Jenkins, please tell me again what happened here tonight, he asked, his tone gentle but firm. Sophia took a deep breath, trying to organize her chaotic thoughts. I got a call from my mom. She sounded scared. When I got here with Jake, we found that man, Mr. Smith. He was threatening my mother. The detective frowned. And Mr. Matthews? How does he fit into all of this? Sophia hesitated. How much should she reveal? How much had Jake already told them? Jake. He's my friend. We were together when I got the call from my mom. In the next room, Jake faced a more intense interrogation. 2 FBI agents pressed him about his involvement with Starlight and the dead man in the bedroom. Mr. Matthews, we understand you're part of an investigation into Starlight Industries. Why didn't you tell us about the threats you were receiving? Jake ran a hand over his face, exhausted. I thought I could handle it on my own. I didn't want to compromise the investigation. And now we have a dead man and civilians involved, the agent retorted harshly. In the living room, Diana sobbed quietly as a gentle police officer questioned her. Mrs. Jenkins, how did you meet this Robert? Diana wiped her tears. On a dating app. He seemed so kind, so normal. I had no idea. Hours passed. The body was removed. Evidence was collected. As the sun began to rise, painting the Chicago sky in shades of pink, Sophia, Jake, and Diana were finally allowed to reunite in the living room. Sophia ran to hug her mother, both trembling with exhaustion and relief. Jake stood a little distance away, his face a mask of guilt and worry. What happens now? Sophia asked, looking between Jake and the agents still occupying the apartment. One of the FBI agents approached. Mr. Matthews will have to come with us for further questioning. As for you two, he looked at Sophia and Diana. You will be under police protection for now. We don't know how deep this conspiracy goes or who else might be involved. Jake stepped forward. Can I have a moment with Sophia? Please. The agent nodded reluctantly. Jake led Sophia to a corner of the room. Sophia, I'm so sorry, he began, his voice breaking. I never wanted you or your mother to get involved in this. I should have walked away the moment I realized I cared about you. Sophia looked at him, a mix of emotions in her eyes. Jake, you saved our lives tonight, and I put them in danger in the first place, he replied bitterly. What's going to happen to you? Sophia asked, fearing the answer. Jake sighed. Honestly, I don't know, but I promise I'll do everything I can to keep you and your mother safe, even if it means... He didn't finish the sentence, but Sophia understood. Even if it meant never seeing her again. Jake, Sophia began, but was interrupted by one of the agents. Time to go, Mr. Matthews. Jake cast a final look at Sophia, full of regret and something more. Something that looked a lot like love. Then he was taken away. Sophia returned to her mother's side, watching Jake leave. Her mind spun with everything that had happened and the choices now laid out before her. Remain silent and try to return to her normal life? Or dive deeper into this conspiracy, seeking the truth and maybe a chance to help Jake? As the sun rose over the Chicago skyline, Sophia knew her decision would shape not only her future, but possibly the future of many others. The girl who had entered that dating app looking for a connection now found herself at the center of a much larger plot than she could have ever imagined. And somewhere in the city, the true powers behind Starlight Industries began to realize that their carefully constructed house of cards was about to come crashing down. 3 weeks had passed since the fateful night at Diana's apartment. Sophia and her mother had been relocated to a safe house under constant police surveillance. Sophia's routine at the hospital had been temporarily suspended, leaving her with too much time to think and little to do. One rainy Wednesday afternoon, Sophia was sitting by the window, watching the raindrops slide down the glass, when her phone vibrated. It was a message from an unknown number. Starlight, Files, Midnight, Navy Pier, come alone. Sophia's heart raced. Could it be Jake? Or a trap? She knew she should inform the agents assigned to protect her, but something inside her urged her to act on her own. When night fell, Sophia waited for her mother to fall asleep before silently slipping out of the apartment. The Navy Pier was almost deserted at that hour, the sound of Lake Michigan's waves crashing against the docks the only audible noise. Sophia. She turned sharply, her heart leaping into her throat. Jake emerged from the shadows, looking thinner and more tired than she remembered. Jake, what's going on? Why all this secrecy? He looked around nervously before responding. We don't have much time. I found something big, Sophia. Something that's going to blow the Starlight case wide open. Jake handed Sophia a flash drive. All the files are here. Financial records, emails, recordings, everything we need to take down not just Starlight, but corrupt politicians, judges, even FBI agents. Sophia held the flash drive as if it were a bomb about to go off. Why are you giving this to me? Because I don't trust anyone else, Jake replied, his eyes locking onto hers. And because I love you, Sophia, and I know you'll do the right thing. Before Sophia could respond, headlights illuminated the pier. Jake pushed her behind a container. Go, now. Sophia ran, clutching the flash drive in her hand, her heart pounding wildly. When she reached a safe distance, she looked back just in time to see Jake being approached by men in suits. Back at the safe house, Sophia inserted the flash drive into her laptop with trembling hands. What followed were hours spent delving into a labyrinth of documents, each revelation more shocking than the last. Starlight wasn't just a tech company. It was the center of a vast network of corruption that spanned all levels of government and the private sector. Money laundering, bribery, blackmail. It was all there, documented in disturbing detail. And then, Sophia found something that made her blood run cold. An email mentioning her father, who had passed away years ago. Apparently, he had discovered part of the scheme and was silenced. The pieces of the puzzle began to fit together. Her father's sudden cancer, her parents' divorce shortly before his death, her mother's depression. It was all part of a bigger plan. As the sun rose on the horizon, Sophia made her decision. She couldn't stay silent. She couldn't let her father's sacrifice and the risks Jake had taken be in vain. With determination, she picked up her phone and dialed a number. "Hello? Yes, my name is Sophia Jenkins. I have information about the Starlight case, and I believe it's time for the truth to come out." As she spoke, Sophia knew she was crossing a point of no return. The girl who had entered a dating app seeking connection now found herself about to shake the foundations of power. What she didn't know was that her decision would trigger a series of events that would not only change her life but potentially the course of history. And somewhere, in the shadows, those who had remained unpunished for so long began to feel the ground tremble beneath their feet. The truth was about to come out, and nothing would ever be the same. The sun rose over Chicago, bathing the city in a golden light that seemed ironically serene given the chaos about to unfold. Sophia, exhausted but determined, watched from the window of the 15th floor of the federal building, where she had spent the last 72 hours in intense interrogations and meetings. The contents of Jake's flash drive had detonated a bomb in the political and corporate landscape of the United States. Headlines screamed about the scandal of the century, while federal agents conducted simultaneous raids on Starlight Industries' offices and the residences of influential politicians across the country. Sophia turned at the sound of the door opening. It was Special Agent Maria Rodriguez, the woman who had led the interrogations and now coordinated the massive operation. "Ms. Jenkins," she said, a slight smile on her usually stern face. "I think you'll want to see this." Rodriguez turned on the TV on the wall. The news showed live footage of Starlight executives and high-ranking politicians being escorted in handcuffs. "Thanks to you and Mr. Matthews, we're dismantling one of the largest corruption networks in the country's history," Rodriguez explained. "Your father would be proud." Tears welled up in Sophia's eyes at the thought of her father. "And Jake? Where is he?" Rodriguez's face turned serious. "Mr. Matthews is in protective custody. He took great risks to bring this information to light. As soon as it's safe, he will be released." At that moment, the door opened again. Diana entered, her eyes red from crying but with a smile on her face. "Oh, Sophia," she whispered, hugging her daughter. "I'm so sorry for everything." Mother and daughter embraced, years of secrets and misunderstandings dissolving in that moment. "Ms. Jenkins," Rodriguez gently interrupted, "there's one more thing you need to see." She handed Sophia a folder. Inside were documents detailing a secret bank account in Sophia's name, created by her father before he died. "Your father knew he was in danger," Rodriguez explained. "He left this for you, along with evidence that helped us connect the final dots in the case." Sophia flipped through the documents, finding a letter addressed to her. With trembling hands, she opened it and began to read. "My dearest Sophia, if you're reading this, it means I didn't manage to expose the truth in life. But it also means you are stronger and braver than I ever could have imagined. Forgive me for keeping secrets from you and your mother. I just wanted to protect you. The money in this account is for you to rebuild your life away from all this madness. Use it wisely, and always remember, the truth, no matter how painful, is always the right path. With all my love, Dad." Tears streamed down Sophia's face as she finished reading. Diana hugged her again, both of them processing the sacrifice and love of a man they had misunderstood for so long. Weeks passed. The Starlight case dominated the news, prompting a wave of anti-corruption reforms and a renewal in public trust. Sophia, now seen as a reluctant hero, decided to use the money her father had left to create a foundation dedicated to supporting whistleblowers and investigative journalists. One sunny Sunday afternoon, Sophia was sitting on a bench in Millennium Park when a familiar figure approached. "Hey," Jake said softly, sitting down beside her. Sophia smiled, her heart racing like the first time she saw him. "Hey you. So, what happens now?" Jake asked, his hand finding hers. Sophia looked out at the Chicago skyline, the city that had been the backdrop for so much drama and now seemed full of possibilities. "Now?" she replied, intertwining her fingers with Jake's. Now we start over, but this time without secrets. As the sun set over the city, Sophia reflected on the incredible journey that a simple match on a dating app had triggered. Love, loss, betrayal, redemption. She had experienced it all and more. And there, sitting next to Jake, with the weight of secrets finally lifted from her shoulders, Sophia Jenkins knew she was ready for the next chapter of her life. A chapter of honesty, courage, and above all, true love. The dating app that had started it all was still on her phone. But Sophia knew she wouldn't need it anymore. She had found her deepest connection not through an algorithm, but through the trials and tribulations life had thrown her way. And so, with the twilight painting the Chicago sky in shades of pink and gold, Sophia and Jake walked hand in hand towards the future, ready to face whatever life had in store for them together. So, if you haven't subscribed yet, click the subscribe button below and join our community. Based on your interests, we've picked this story for you that's showing on your screen right now. Click to watch it now. We're sure you'll love it. See you next time.